What's up everybody and welcome to another video. In today's lesson we're going to talk about support and resistance. Now support and resistance and understanding where to find them is going to allow you to figure out areas where it's smart to buy and areas where it's smart to take profits or sell, right? And breaks of these support and resistances are going to allow you to figure out if maybe the price or the coin is moving bullishly or maybe bearishly. So in today's lesson we're going to discuss what support is, what resistance is, different types of support and resistances, and we're going to talk about flips. Now, first of all, we got to discuss what support is. Now, in the most simple terms, everybody always tries to complicate it, but it's area where we expect there to be a bounce, right? Where there is demand and where more than likely if price goes there, it will bounce or price will bounce. So as we can see here, we have a horizontal support and we can see that every time the candlesticks go there, we have buying pressure, right? People are buying at this level, and this is a support. Now, resistance is the opposite. This is areas where there's selling pressure or supply. So this is an area where we can see every time price goes here, it rejects. Simple as that. Now, let's talk about different types of support and resistances. Now, we talked about horizontal support and resistance. We also have Fibs or Fibonacci, which we'll talk about in a later video. But as we can see, each one of these lines is a different fib. And whenever price gets there, we see some rejection. So these are resistances that fibs are used for, and they're used for support as well. But for this example, we're just looking at fibs as a resistance. So they can be also used as support and resistance. We also have trend lines, which we discussed in the TradingView tutorial. But trend lines act as a support and resistance. As we can see, we have this red line, which is a resistance. And every time price goes up here, it rejects. Right? It keeps rejecting until we have a breakout. So this is where the flip happens. But for now, the red line is resistance and the green line, as we can see, every time price goes down here, it bounces. So we have a trend line support and resistance. We also have EMAs or exponential moving averages, or MAs, which we will also talk about in a later video, but they can also act as support and resistance. And now we will talk about flips. So anytime you have a support, which, by the way, this is a box instead of a horizontal line, because a lot of the times your support and resistance won't go to an exact price point. They'll go to a general area. So for me, I don't like horizontal support and resistance too much. Well, I do. I just like to make them a box. As we can see, it doesn't go to an exact price point, but we go to a general area. So we can see right here, this support becomes resistance once it's broken. So this area has acted as support, but then the moment price went down below it and closed below it, the moment it came back up to this previous support, it became resistance. So the moment we break through support, it becomes resistance. And as we can see, every time we move up to this region, we reject it, right? So support turns resistance once it's broken. And the opposite is also true. Resistance, as we can see, we have some resistance right here. Every time price goes up here, rejects. The moment price goes through it, it becomes support. As we can see here, we had a big breakout, we had a retest, and we had a continuation, which I cut off the right of it, but we had a continuation here. But we can see resistance turned into support. Now we'll talk about some do's and don'ts when it comes to support and resistance. Number one, do not have 1,000 lines, all right? So your support and resistance is supposed to be clear, it's supposed to be concise, and you're only supposed to have the most important area. So if your chart looks like this, go ahead and remove all of it and start from scratch. So whenever you have a chart, you want to make sure to highlight the most important levels where it makes sense for you to have those levels. So don't have random levels that don't make sense. Also, the higher time frames, if you're looking at a support or resistance on the higher time frames, it's going to take precedence over the lower time frames. So if you're going down to the 5 hours or 5 minutes and you're charting 1,000 lines, don't, right? Unless you're a scalper, keep in mind, whatever your strategy is, whatever type of trader you are, stick with the higher time frames unless you're, a day trader or scalper. But daily time frame up, pretty neat to have some support and resistances, as well as the 4 hours and the 1 hour as well. But anything below that, you just don't want to focus on it too much. So the higher time frames, you want to go in and highlight the most important levels, right, that you see that stick out to you. Looking at support and resistance, it's supposed to make sense, right? You are trading for yourself. Don't have 1,000 lines. Don't have weird lines that don't make sense. People always overcomplicate support and resistance when they don't need to, right? You're going to look at the chart and you're going to look for areas of clear rejections, right? Clear bounces or flips, right? And you want to highlight those important areas. Don't highlight anything that just doesn't make any sense, right? So highlight the most important areas that you can see in the chart, and those are the ones you should stick with. Also on the right, little cheat sheet or little cheat for you to use. If you're going through and highlighting weekly levels, say we go up to the weekly level or time frame, and I can see a clear level right here, and I can see a clear level right here. What you can do, right? What you can do is you can group these up. You can right click, make a group of drawings. You can rename this weekly, and you can turn this off if you want. So if you're charting a whole bunch of different support and resistances, maybe you have them on the higher time frames, maybe you have them on the lower time frames, you can go ahead on the right hand side and just drag and drop. Or you can also name them by double clicking on them, going to text and doing something like this, weekly. All right. So when it comes to support and resistance, only have the most important areas highlighted. Don't focus on the noise. If you're a beginner, definitely stick with the higher time frames. Chart from highest time frame down, so monthly. If you see anything on the monthly time frame, they move down. But yeah, it's supposed to make sense, supposed to be clear. There's tons of different support and resistances that you can have, but you know, important areas when it comes to support and resistance. If one breaks, the next one's probably the next one to go. Right, so if you have a support that's broken, look for the next support and the next support, and that will allow you to figure out areas where it's smart for you to buy, right? So if you know support broke down here, you have the open price, which was right here for this coin, which is Unify, and you'd have this level highlighted, right? Because this is an important level, and this is where you might want to buy. A lot of the times though, keep in mind, price won't go to an exact price point. Sometimes you'll get front ran, which means if everybody's looking at the same level, some people might put their bids a little bit higher just to have their order filled. So as we can see here, I'm on the exact level, but we see the wick bounced off 20 cents differently than this level. So sometimes you're gonna have to front run your level, because when it comes to support and resistance and trading overall, it's all psychology, right? If everybody's thinking the same thing, if everybody has the same level, you need to find an edge to your trading. So if everybody sees the same level, you're gonna have it a little bit higher just so you can get filled in that trade. And that is just what you gotta do, because trading is rough and everybody's out for themselves. But sometimes you gotta readjust. Sometimes you'll get front ran into your levels. But with that said, that is our video today for support and resistance. Go ahead and pull up your favorite coin and go ahead and chart it, right? Go ahead and make your levels. See what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Keep in mind, everybody has different ways of, you know, setting up their support and resistance levels. Just because someone has different levels than you doesn't mean they're right. It's whatever makes sense to you and whatever the chart respects, right? Keep that in mind. With that said, that is our video for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.